Well, Asian markets, they are trading mixed. Remember, the cues coming in from Wall Street overnight, that was fairly positive. The Nikkei is the only one, actually, as we speak, that's trading in the greens. That's holding with a gain of around 0.2%. Let's pull the Nikkei up for you. It's now, in fact, as flat as can be. The dollar yen, though, is moving favorably. There is some weakness out there. That's moving towards the 111-odd mark. But that's the only index, actually, that's now trading in the green, because the Kospi's come off the high point of the day. That's trading with a bit of a cut. The Straits in the Taiwanese index as well, they started more or less flattish with a bit of a negative bias. That's the Straits, the Taiwanese index, that as well as giving the Nikkei company today, trading in the green with a gain of around 0.2%. The SGX Nifty, well, it's indicating a flattish start with a tad bit of a negative bias.
But let's talk about the U.S. markets then, where the stocks ended higher, though off the day's high, after President Donald Trump said he would delay additional tariffs on Chinese goods and that there had been substantial progress in trade talks over the weekend. The Dow Jones rose over 200 points intraday before closing just 60 points higher. The S&P also ended with marginal gains, while the Nasdaq Composite climbed around 0.4%. CNBC's Kate Rogers gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. stocks finishing the day higher, the Dow adding 60 points, the S&P tacking on 3, the Nasdaq up 26. Oil prices tumbled more than 3% after President Donald Trump tweeted Monday, urging OPEC to lower the cost of crude. Trump tweeted that oil prices are getting too high and asked OPEC to please relax and take it easy, saying that the world cannot take a price hike. Trump hasn't tweeted about OPEC since early December, before the producer group and allies defied his calls to keep pumping at high volumes. Bud Light is in a sticky situation with its Super Bowl ad that shamed other beer brands for using corn syrup. According to the Wall Street Journal, AB InBev, Molson Coors Brewing, Heineken, and Constellation brands had been in a year-long talk to partner on a national ad campaign to revive U.S. beer sales. But Bud Light's ad has jeopardized that alliance. U.S. beer consumption has been declining as consumers drink more spirits and wine or ditch alcohol altogether. And New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft formally charged today on 2 counts of soliciting a prostitute after allegedly visiting a Florida day spa twice in January. The NFL team owner, who was denied engaging in any illegal activity, faces arraignment in April. The NFL, for its part, said today they are prepared to take action against Kraft if necessary. That's the action from the U.S. market. Back to you in Mumbai.
Well, turning attention to the European markets, they closed higher. Investors out there, they're monitoring the ongoing China-US trade talks. This after US President Donald Trump postponed the March 1st deadline. Meanwhile, all eyes in terms of what's going on in terms of Brexit, and the political uncertainty over Brexit remains. Prime Minister Theresa May has delayed returning to Parliament for another key vote on her Brexit deal. MPs are now expected to have another vote by March 12th. Remember, the UK's departure from the European Union is currently scheduled for March 29th.
Well, let's move on to a CNBC exclusive. Billionaire investor Warren Buffett says tariff tussle between the world's leading economies has had an impact on businesses. However, Buffett expects the United States and China to make rational decisions on this issue. Here's an excerpt of his exclusive interaction with CNBC's Becky Quick.
I see the monthly reports from the companies come through, and a fair number, not in insurance at all, obviously, but a fair number of the tariffs have had some impact. Now we're talking 10% tariffs, and a number of them say if it were 25%, there'd be some big adjustments. Some of it, the suppliers have swallowed over in China, and some we split with them, but it pushes prices up. I mean, there's no question about that. But it hasn't had a big effect at 10%. A number of them told me at 25%. I mean, the world changes. I mean, you either get a lot more money for your product, or you source it differently, or you do something.
So are you relieved to hear of the deadline being extended and being pushed off, that March 2nd it's not all going to go to 25%?
Well, I'm relieved at the idea that there's still some chance that sense will prevail. It is bad for China. It's bad for us if we get into some kind of a trade war. And negotiations are tough in something like this. This is a big deal to both both countries, and to some extent you're playing a game of chicken, and because it hurts both countries. And I generally think when two very smart countries have something very important at stake, they'll end up making rational decisions. I mean, I've been figuring that way with the Russians ever since the nuclear bomb. That even though you get all kinds of tensions, and people generally figure out what's best for themselves, and the best thing for both China and the United States is to work out something sensible that both sides can live with.
Did you think there was valid reason for amping up these negotiations, for saying, hey, hang on a second, we're not getting a fair shake?
Well, I think we haven't been getting a fair shake to some degree, but I think we can sustain, I mean, to some extent, the United States can do things that no other country can do. So as I think a number of smaller countries, for example, if they want to run trade surpluses with us, I mean, and it strengthens their economy, it doesn't hurt us that much. I mean, I think we've got a role to play in the world that way, but I don't think we can be Uncle Sap either.
Well, let's also listen into what Warren Buffett makes of the U.S. economy, interest rates, and the Federal Reserve.
Well, I think that the central banks did what they had to do after 2008 and 9. In fact, I think Europe was a little late doing it, but when Draghi finally said, we'll do whatever it takes, the only one that can say that is central banks. And I think central banks behaved very well post the recession. I think he's a terrific choice for Federal Reserve Chairman. He actually was at the Treasury in 1991 when Solomon was in trouble, and I saw him make a lot of very good decisions for the United States government. He's a smart man, and he's very level-headed, and he understands both business and economics, and I don't think you could have a better chairman. So I will never second-guess him. I mean, the rate of improvement has tapered, but it certainly hasn't flattened. Now that could change next month, and home construction has been disappointing, but most of our businesses, I've seen other figures on retail that are strong, including Walmart's, but I would say our retail figures in January were not strong. But January is a peculiar month. That can be affected a lot by weather, although any retailer will always like things on the weather.
Well, let's move on to the currency space. Dollar softens on back of increased risk appetite due to optimism from US and China. Yen, meanwhile, strengthens against the US currency as of now.
Well, and the big positive today is, in fact, in the world of commodities, oil prices have tumbled nearly around 3% following a Donald Trump tweet to the OPEC saying that prices were too high and that the Saudi-led cartel should soften its price-boosting output cuts.
Well, we'll take a quick break. Up next, all the cues and news you need to know for trade this morning.